So this is a panel presentation. I'd like to call on Jane Carlin to get us started this evening. So Jane.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. And it is wonderful to see all of your faces on my screen and to welcome you to this evening's event. I'd like to formally thank Sally Alger for her commitment to this exhibit, serving as this year's coordinator of the exhibit, along with the exhibition team, Pat Chupa, Helen Edwards, and Rachel Watson, and support from Peter Newland, Becky Fraze, Jan Ward, and Debbie Commodore. Now, I'd like to ask you just at the very start for everybody to unmute and give a round of applause.
Bravo! Bravo! More. Once again.
I'm hearing that. That's great.
Good.
It's truly an honor as the library director at the Collins Memorial Library to host this exhibit. And over the course of the last several months, I've had the opportunity to go back to our website and to review our exhibition catalogs and to look at the amazing growth and creativity of all of you involved in this organization. So I'm just so proud to be part of this organization, and it's really, really a milestone to reach the 10th/11th year. And I couldn't be prouder to be involved in this organization. So I thank you for the opportunity to host the organization exhibit. And I can also say, since we opened our doors of the library, literally every single day, people have been coming in to see the exhibit. And it's just so wonderful. Jamie Spain, who works with many of you, is on this call, and she was shaking her head because it's a true testimonial that we walk out to the area of the library that we call the link where the exhibit is, and there are people that I recognize and people that I don't even know, and people that have said, we've missed this show. So it really has made a mark in the community, and it's just very, very gratifying. And in fact, those are not just my words. I'd like to read you some of the comments from the guest book. Bravo, PSBA, for another amazing exhibit. The work of each individual artist is unique, inspiring, and creative. Thank you to everyone who has shared their work. This exhibit is wonderful. Thank you. This exhibit is unique and marvelous. Beautiful, inspiring, fabulous. And I'd like to conclude these introductory remarks with what I think is an incredible comment and something that is so meaningful for all of us. This exhibit has given me a whole new vision of books as art. So congratulations to the exhibit team and each and every one of you that have been involved in this exhibit. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jane. Jane, you, for my part, I want to say thank you to you. You have been a big support this whole time. You too are a very creative person, and you have paved the way for a lot of learning and expansion for all of us for the last 10-11 years. So this presentation is going to be in two parts. The first part, we made a video. It was not easy, but we made a video to present to you of a panel discussion moderated by our very own Peter Newland. He acted as moderator, interviewed our 4 exhibitors, our 4 panelists about their works. He asked very serious and searching questions of each of them. And then part 2 of tonight's program will be a time of live question and answer.
Good evening. My name is Peter Newland, and on behalf of the Puget Sound Book Artists President, Deb Greenwood, and the 10th anniversary curatorial team headed by Sally Alger and including Pat Chupa, Helen Edwards, Jan Ward, Rachel Watson, and myself, welcome. We are very pleased that you are here with us this evening for a panel discussion with 4 of the 47 artists whose books are in the cases at the Collins Library at Puget Sound University for our 10th anniversary celebration. The exhibit runs from August 9th to October 1, and visitors are currently allowed on the campus, so we urge you to see the show in person. This evening's discussion was pre-recorded and will be broadcast on Zoom on Thursday, September 23rd, beginning at 6 p.m. We will take questions in the chat, and the panelists will be on the call to provide answers. With that, let me introduce our panelists. Lisa Meyers Bullmash. Her title of her book is You've Got What I Need. The team of Jim Murphy and Lucia Harrison, Tell Me a Story, a Vietnam War memoir. And Dorothy McCuistion, In the Beginning. Also not with us at this panel, but pre-recorded and will be integrated with the presentation you're viewing, is Sha Towers. Sha is from Baylor University, and his book is a flag book, Seeds of Joy. With that, let's begin with some questions. So Lisa, I'd like to certainly have you tell us a lot about your book. One of the things that I think everybody would be interested in is that it's a combination, at least in my view, of between an altered book and an assemblage.
Yes.
And I was hoping that you could tell us a bit about how you pulled those different parts together. It's very striking, and I've pondered it a bit, but I need some help.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliments. This is pretty standard for me when I am making an altered book. I take a book, I seal it, I dig into it, and then I put in my own narrative, and usually I mount it onto a hardback book cover. So for this piece, I was starting off with the flowers that you see, the molded flowers that you see in the central niche. They're foxgloves. And at the time I thought about this idea for this book, there were foxgloves growing all around my house. And I was amazed and at the same time a little nervous because I know that foxglove, every part of foxglove is poisonous. So you have to be really careful around it. And that got me thinking about how foxglove is the basis for digitalis, which is a heart medicine. And so it's useful in some ways, but if not handled carefully, it can be dangerous, even deadly. So I started thinking about the foxgloves, the beauty and the danger packed into one. And because I'm generally focused on questions of identity and the vulnerability of Black bodies, I started transferring that idea of beauty and danger to the way African American and women of African descent are often portrayed. They're often portrayed as nurturers and saviors in political fights and all these good things, but it doesn't take much for the perception of that Black woman to be flipped on its opposite, and for her to be seen as threatening or dangerous or somehow out of control. on its opposite, and for her to be seen as threatening or dangerous or somehow out of control.
Okay, okay. Well, the book was originally published in 1877 in England, and then it came to America, I think in 1890. The Humane Society picked it up and as a cruelty to animals sort of thing that they wanted to emphasize. They sold 90 million copies, and it's still in production today in many edited forms. So,
Oh, yeah, I remember being read this book when I was about 4 or 5. So that was what got my attention at first with the book. And I thought, oh, I like how it's old and it's got the foxed edges. And, ooh, let me see if this is any different or the same as what I was read. And then I found it really is different. Yeah, because there are, shall we say, idioms common to the time, which means the N-word is used in this book, and the comparisons of the horse to the beauty of the night and midnight and all things that are considered beautiful and also dark in some ways apply metaphorically to Black women.
right. Much of that, I think, has been edited out of the more recent versions, but
Yeah, some of it.
appropriately. But
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to note that this book was actually banned in South Africa merely because it combined the two words black and beauty, and that was offensive to people that lived there in those times. And I don't want to get all wrapped up in that one, but it's very interesting. So tell us about the white kid gloves.
Yes.
And then the laxative cap. I mean, I could make up something, but I'd rather hear it from you.
Well, the great thing about art is that you can interpret it any way you want to. So I decided to use the kid gloves because I was thinking about them as a symbol of femininity. And then as I was mulling this around in my head, I started thinking about the foxgloves and the kid gloves. And at some point, I held the gloves up and the fingers were dangling down. And it reminded me of what I've read about a Japanese spirit called the kitsune, which is a fox spirit. And in that mythology, the kitsune has 9 tails. So the fingers of the gloves started to make me think about foxtails. And the laxative box at first was more of a covering mechanism because I was thinking, oh, how am I going to actually attach these things? But then I thought, well, you know, in a very indirect way, it kind of works because femininity is traditionally expressed as purity and light and nothing messy and a little French tin that you can't read the words to, but it looks really cute. That's perfect. That's very feminine.
Okay. So it's yeah, they say you can't judge a book by a cover, but almost everybody does. Otherwise, that's why they face them front in the bookstores, so.
That's why
you
they have
notice
art on the
cover.
front. That's why they have art on the front.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. So Jim and Lucia, couple of questions to start with. One, how did you guys become a team? And who was the instigator and actually, after 50 years of this, I imagine being in a shoebox or a suitcase or somewhere, suddenly becoming willing to bring it out at the same time a lot of America and some libraries, in fact, are deaccessioning books about the topic. Unfortunately, we tend to forget these things too often. That's an editorial comment, but so interested in how this came about. What made the two of you say, "Hey, we got to do this"?
Well, we've been together since '04. And actually, we took a class at Frank Toby Jones in poetry and memoirs, and they were both taught by Aunt Thea. And then during the class, I mean, she actually had us writing haikus and, you know, short poems. So, and we had to pick a topic. So Lucia thought this would be a good topic when I was in the Philippines and Vietnam, because I had all the old pictures and all this other stuff tucked away in a big old, you know, pineapple box, a banana box, whatever. And so it was her instigation that made me do it.
Okay.
Anyway, I wrote, and then there's a poem on the back page. It's called "Tell Me a Story," and that pretty much sums up the whole thing. It's real short. Should I read it?
Well, there.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
Historically, it seems like I've heard a lot of stories of veterans whose friends, girlfriends, wives, relatives have said, "Hey, what's this all about? Tell me." And there has been a lot of reluctance to tell the story. But it's, I think, particularly to other veterans, it's always interesting to hear someone else's take on it and how they pick that up. So I think the book will be very interesting to the veterans that come into the Collins and so on. So
What really moved me to get Jim involved in it is he has a collection of about 50 letters that he wrote to his mother.
And she saved them.
And she saved them all in their envelopes.
And I have the original letters with the envelopes.
And they're just, I mean, they're tear jerkers. They're just, because he's writing home and saying things that, oh, everything's great. We're water skiing on the Saigon River, and, and so it paints a certain picture. But as Jim moved from the Philippines to Vietnam, then they become a little more frantic and up to the time that he came home. And so it's quite a, they're really beautiful, and I was struck with that and thought that people would really like to hear those.
yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I heard a figure the other day that the median age of people in the United States is now 38.1 years. And of course, we first sent troops into Vietnam in 1965, so over half the population didn't experience anything about Vietnam. The only way they would learn about it is if they chose to read about it. So, and largely, I think it's thought of as largely a mistake, and certainly a war we lost. And it would, now we are faced with a current situation today on the news media that brings back a lot of memories, I think. So, would you like to read one of your haikus?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
There's a picture of me sitting in the Philippines. We had these tents we lived in. They were open with a tin roof, and there was like maybe eight beds in each one. And so I have a picture. I took a picture of my bare feet laying on a cot, and the haiku is: a cot with feet out, a see-through tent, a screen door. Don't bother to lock it.
So the original documents that you have, these are mostly copies, except for the pictures or original pictures?
What I did was, I took the letters and I scanned them into the computer.
Right.
And then cleaned them up a bit with Photoshop. And then, and I did the same thing with the photographs. And I had them then reprinted professionally and then cut the edges so they have the kind of wavy edges that those old photographs had to try to make them look as original as possible.
So were
Because I
the
wanted to-
originals developed in country?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I wouldn't swear to it, but
through a PX or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
So they're all Jim's original photographs. And they're not like photos off the internet or anything like that. They're all his original, so it's his experience.
And my letters.
Well, that was good of your mother to
Unbelievable.
save that and hand your history back to you. You know, I think that's
It's incredible.
something that all parents could do for their children at some point in time. They hold their history in the box that's in the attic that
Yeah.
you know something terrible is going to happen to it.
And you don't
when-
even think of it
Yeah.
at the time, you know? It's like,
Right.
oh, that's great, Ma. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, very good, very good. So what else would you like to tell us about the book? I mean, it's an accordion book that's both-sided, but there's
Yeah.
more there than that.
One side is the
You chose to
Philippines
lay it out in a certain way, Philippines on one side,
and Vietnam
Vietnam on the other.
Well, I think, for me, the difference in the letters from the Philippines, it's all like, we're at the beach, we're, having a good time, war is hell, ha ha ha, things like that. It's very, and then, after the Tet Offensive in 1968, then things really changed. And so, I wanted to like contrast the two experiences so that the one after the Tet Offensive talks about he writes about his work schedule, how many, they had to, how long did you have to work? Like 12-hour shift?
12-hour days, 7 days a week. I
Yeah.
wrote it.
Yeah, why don't you read that
I'll
one?
just read this, it's short. It's called Tell Me a Story. Another time on a bicycle on a road to the flight line, I sweated in Air Force combat fatigues. It was good exercise. This was the season, before Tet of 68, before the 122 millimeter rockets visited every night, before 12-hour shifts 7 days a week on the flight line. The name of the story is Vietnam, but you must never say it. Okay, 50 years later you can, but tell only of the bicycle.
Yeah, well, I think you're telling us a bit more, and my guess is there's probably a few more books that could come out of that storehouse of letters and photographs, so
Yeah.
why quit now? You should make an edition,
You sound like Lucia.
volume 1, volume 2. Well, those of us that get to play with books a lot, we have more ideas than we're ever gonna execute, but
Right.
with help, first-class help like that, I
Oh,
mean,
no
you
kidding.
have no excuse.
You're right, again.
All right, we've settled that.
And I do think that people do not really understand what happened to people that went to Vietnam and how they basically were young men. They were 18, 19 years old. They were stripped of their identity, shaved. They had to wear all the same underwear, all of those things. They went to Vietnam. Either Jim volunteered to go to Vietnam, other people were drafted. And no matter what the circumstances were, they were really taught not to care too much about other people, because that person next to them could die at any moment, not to, be attached. So there's a whole psychology that was done to these young men that's, left them for the rest of their lives. And then, not only that, but then there's physical consequences from the Agent Orange and things like that. And then when they got home, they were spit at, people called them baby killers, no matter what, or they're crazy or whatever. And so here you've gone through this experience, and I don't really think people get what really happened of that complete stripping of identity. And then just, whatever their role was, what Jim was fixing radar equipment, doesn't matter what your role was, but it was a really traumatic experience. And so I think the country still owes them a debt of gratitude and understanding, and I think we need to hear the stories, so.
before we're all gone.
Yeah.
Or at least 3 hearing aids from the VA, something like that. Yeah, well, I'm a veteran myself, so we could talk a long time about our different experiences, but I'm very proud that you made the effort to tell your story, because I think people need to know, and we need to remember, and we need to stop going crazy places, doing crazy things, as far as, that's a political statement, but how'd that slip in there? I don't know. Well, Dorothy, your turn. And before we get started, this is a very interesting book combining Darwin and the Bible. I'm not sure that's ever been done before, so it could be a first, but it did send me to Abe's books, because I wanted to kind of know. So I hadn't read the colophon, so I was thinking, okay, King James Version, from 1611, and then Darwin in 1859, so there's a couple 100+ years between those two thoughts, and I don't know if this means anything, but your book could become very valuable, I think, because 1616 edition of the King James Bible on Abe's book is available for $295,000, $3 to ship it. I don't know, but it's also available for $1.
Yeah.
So there's a broad range there, and a first edition of Darwin's book is $400,000, and it comes with free shipping. So whatever that means. Now tell us about how you came to want to combine these two things into an artist book.
Yeah. Well, I've been interested in Darwin for a long time. So, and I was part of an exhibit, maybe 10 years ago, where everyone who entered the exhibit, actually I curated the exhibit, and everyone made a piece or submitted a piece that had to do with evolution. So that's always kind of in the back of my head, and it's just something I'm drawn to when I read something in the paper, and I read a lot of Darwin at that time, and then I'm also interested in the Bible and the creation story. So I took the creation story from Genesis, very edited down, very few words, the 7 days, and sort of started out with mostly the biblical story, but then gradually brought in Darwin's, and mostly Darwin's theories of evolution are in the book as images, and so all the text is from the Bible. So I kind of mix the two. So the other part of it that also instigated the book, I had from that exhibit 10 years ago, I had a very large print that I'd made, monotype, that was about 20 by 30, and I thought, I'm never going to sell this piece. It's never going to hang. It's a huge thing in a frame. So I took it out of the frame and I cut it into 4 pieces. That was a brave day for me to cut that print up, but I did it, and because I had this idea for this book, and this was all a little bit prior to the pandemic hitting, and then I sat on it for a while because I was sort of frozen those first few weeks, but then I thought I have to do something with all this time I have. So I had this idea, and anyway, it just evolved. And I inserted those pages from that print and then added new pages. And so in addition to inserting Darwin's ideas, also in the Bible, God is always he. And as you get towards the end, God becomes she and her. So that's another kind of twist on it as well. So I made the book itself, and then I I thought, well, a Bible needs to, a nice Bible needs a nice box. So I made a clamshell box for it, which was, I've only made one other clamshell box before, so that was a challenge. And also working at home during the pandemic with that, maybe going to some YouTube videos and things, so not being able to go to someone's studio or an expert that I know to help me with that kind of thing. But I bumbled my way through it, so, yeah.
Do you think that the pandemic gave you more inspiration to make something rather than less, or was it hard to get started?
No, I had already started it, so it was a matter of just continuing. And it was also, I think what the pandemic did was I had so much time that wasn't interrupted by, as we all did, these normal things that we went off to do, meetings and meeting people friends for lunch and going to the movies and all these things interrupting our time. So I had all this time, so I just thought, I can take as long as I want on this book. And I think that was kind of nice, and not worrying, and as it went on and on, we didn't know when it was going to end. It was just being able to spend so much time on a project and not be concerned about how long it was taking. And then the deadline for the show, the initial exhibit the show got canceled or postponed, and so then I had even more time. And I just thought, well, just keep going.
Yeah.
So that's.
Well, I think it was very interesting that in all the falderall around trying to put a show together or to get a show put together, to get people to participate, and without a theme, we sort of abandoned the theme and just said, hey, make a book, please, And when people come to the call-ins and they look in those cases, they're going to see a wide variety of topics and styles and structures that kind of surprised me, that how broad it is, and that's certainly represented here with this panel as well. But I think I'd like to go back down the line again and give you a chance to tell us what you want people to take away most from your book. What is the thing that you really want? If somebody walked out of the room and saw your book, went through it, and they left the room and they had one thought, what would you want that to be? Jim, can you handle that question, or should I rephrase it?
I'll rephrase it, that'd be good.
Well, this is a story that you held to yourself for 50 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And you decided to share it. So what's the one thing that you'd like me or anybody else to kind of take away from your book?
I would say that the one thing would be that it's still a personal story that relates to family and friends, and that it's something that you went through, but you went through it. And you went through it and you did okay, as long as you didn't get hurt. So I would say that you should get a kick out of the story, because it's humorous, and it's poignant. And a lot of times humor can create a lot of deep meanings in people, and that's what I think this does.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So Dorothy.
Yeah, gee, I'm not sure.
Well, if we left the
I'm not
room and
sure.
said it's a beautiful box, which it is, it's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
That would be one thing, but
Yeah.
from a content thing, because
Okay,
there is a
yeah,
real
okay.
dichotomy between
Yes.
how the Bible
Yeah.
says it all happened in 7 days, and Darwin kind of thinks it might have taken a bit longer.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So,
So yeah, I guess it's having people think about that. Just think about the evolution and juxtaposed to the Bible, I think probably most of my people, my circle of friends, my family wouldn't have any problem with it. There might be some people that would have a problem with what I have in here. I suppose there are some people still around who believe in the creation story, that it all happened in 7 days. I'm not one of them. But it's also, actually for me, it's that these two ideas can coexist. And you can believe in both of them. I guess maybe that's part of it too. You can believe in God and, you know, the stories in the Bible, you could, in a certain way, but you can also believe in, or not believe, but you can, understand science and scientific thought.
Science and religion can coexist.
Science and
peacefully.
religion can coexist, exactly, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Lisa.
The pressure's on. I think I'd like people to take home with them two ideas. Their associations with the book Black Beauty as a piece of art, as well as our current notions of what beauty is. Because I think that there are so many ways that our society, and sometimes we tell ourselves that we are not beautiful for one reason or another. And when you think about the feminine ideal, that role is very narrow and it's very hard to maintain. It's not meant to be something that you can actually achieve. And I'd like people to think about the fact that beauty doesn't mean the same thing to every person. And maybe they think a little bit more about how they perceive beauty in the world, whether it's according to what they think about people who don't look like them, or whether they think about things that are ugly beautiful, things that are not considered traditionally beautiful, but standing on their own, they have a beauty and a richness that you won't find somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. Your book, The Seeds of Joy, which I love that desire to find a metaphysical space that has no rancor. It's not something you get on the nightly news. So let's talk a little bit about the inspiration behind looking for that spot.
Sure. The part of my response to that is a couple of converging things, which is for me and for my work is sort of a common thread of like unexpected collisions of lots of different things and ideas. On one plane, there was just some experimentation with the flag book structure that I'm really intrigued by. I can remember the very first flag book that I ever encountered, which was Karen Hanmer's Destination Moon, which is a marvelous example of that kind of work. And it's something that just, it's like, I really need to wrestle with this. I need to experiment with this. And then in an entirely other kind of pathway, especially in this time over this past year, thinking about the isolation that was the result of a lot of this past year, which reminded me of traditions that are known for or sort of encourage that kind of solitary reflection. I feel like there was a lot of time in this past year for whether we were ready for it or not, that was good for solitary reflection. And one of those things that comes to mind is just geography that's important to me, not because it's from my own tradition or my own background, except that as a young child, I got dragged along on a lot of vacations in the kind of American Southwest, and some of the areas of New Mexico and Arizona that became, enchanting and really intriguing spaces for me, spaces that I continue to visit. Yeah. And so part of this, before I realized where this would all end up, part of it was wrestling, or not wrestling, but just wanting to tap into that kind of experience, or tap into those memories and that kind of fondness. Probably also some missing those places, missing traveling to those places that have been kind of a regular ritual for me and my family. But at that point, the work that I was doing with the materials and the structure felt like they were headed toward more of a kind of just an abstract exploration of predominantly the colors that were reminiscent of, a lot of the canyons and mesas in that area. And as I was thinking about how I wanted to, represent this, again, a lot of my work is very, I don't know if I should admit this on a recording, but a lot of my work is very experimental and kind of a let's see where we end up, rather than a great masterful plan that I can execute just like I planned it. So in the midst of all of that kind of exploration, I bumped into another tradition that's not my own, but these 9 Buddhist prayers, and there was a sense that there were these two very different kind of cultural, spiritual kind of realms sort of came together and made sense for me in this sort of solitude, meditative kind of thing.
So it is largely a response to the pandemic and some of the feelings that have come to you that way.
Right.
Yeah. It's I think always instructive when you say, well, I'm just going to start off and see where this goes. But I guess almost all artist books are really built first and foremost for ourselves. It becomes an internal thought process. The one thing that we lament about this Zoom culture that we're living in right now, even though we have the books in the cases, and we're lucky UPS has loosened a little bit of the access to the library, and so people are coming in and they are get to view the books in the cases, which we weren't sure that was going to happen. We put them in the cases hoping that would happen. So a lot of people are seeing your book, and so I think that's a good thing. But the one thing they're not doing, and always part of my judgment of a book, is holding it in my hand, holding it in my hand. So maybe last question, but tell us what we're missing by not being able to hold your book in our hand and really turn it.
Well, one of the things you're missing, and you all know the answer to this already, but one of the things that you're missing is the whole beauty of artist books compared to most every other artistic endeavor is that intimate, tactile, controlled experience. When I talk to students who come to visit the artist book collection at Baylor, I said, this is what I want you to really think about is any other art experience you've had. And often this is in galleries and with art forms that are not intended to be touched or manipulated, or, they're only for your eyes. People will frown if you go and pull canvases off the wall or rub your hands on them or sniff them or taste them. But that's what's so beautiful. It's one of the things that's beautiful about artist books is that it's made to be experienced. And even if that's at the simplest level of unfolding the experience at your own pace, at your own, you can spend, and I say this to students too, that, yes, you can walk into a gallery and glance up and see a painting and give it, half of a second and say, I've seen that work. You can also sit on a bench and ponder it for hours, but it's still in a very spectatory kind of way. And I love that about artist books. So you're missing that, but you already knew, that.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
And I guess the other piece, this is really kind of related to that universal answer. I would say that one of the things that, not as a practicing Buddhist, but as an appreciative neophyte kind of coming to this and looking at these prayers that are shared in this book, I like that you can experience them in various pieces and parts. You can turn the like trio of flags like you were looking at a regular traditional book, and you can read that whole prayer by itself, isolated, not in a, not this, it's very different than if I just printed the prayers out and handed them to you, and here they all are in front of you like that painting on the wall, but that they're slowly doled out one at a time. But I also like that when you when you open up that flag book, you're presented with little chunks of each one of those prayers, not the whole prayer. Maybe it's just the kind of the verb of the prayer, or the, I like that it's in very different forms. And I like too, maybe this is, I'm just winging my response here, but I'm thinking maybe these prayers or things like these prayers that you can quickly read through and say, sure, I understand what those words mean. Now moving on to whatever else I was doing, or you can sit with them. I like that this was sort of the product of experimenting and figure it out as you go. There are 9 prayers, and they're presented in 3 iterations in the way they normally appear. And that's, using the first example is, may I be peaceful, etc. May he, she be peaceful, etc. May they be peaceful. And I didn't have enough pages to do 9 times 3 anyway, so I just collapsed them all into a collective we. Right. But when also math is not my greatest gift, so I'm like, oh no, the way this flag book structure lays out, there's room for 6 of these prayers. I can't just throw out 3 of them or pick my favorite, so that doesn't seem right. So 3 of them appear on the spine. When you open up the book, the backside has 3 of them, and there's some logic to the interior 6 prayers all begin with may we something, and the exterior 3 are all learning and knowing, right? May I learn, may I know kinds of things. So the reason I bring all that up is I think it reflects this idea that book arts do a beautiful job of refusing to the viewer, refusing to let you say, when you race through the Louvre and you take a quick glance and you see all those people crowded around a painting and you're just like, oh yeah, that's the Mona Lisa. I've seen the Mona Lisa.
It's right there.
What I love about book arts is they're like, nope, you don't get to do that.
Right.
when you can say, wow, that's a really beautiful cover, or that's interesting, I wonder what's in there, but you're not privileged to the experience until you give of your time and your space and your willingness to peel it open and explore.
Be a participant. Yeah, for sure. It's interactive, and that's the thing that I certainly like about it.
Well, one thing for sure as we wrap up, your books are beautiful. There's just no doubt about it. And there's 44 others in the cases downstairs here at the Collins Library that are wonderful as well. And so being a member of PSBA and having these exhibits every once in a while is just a fantastic thing that the college and the PSBA are doing, and I hope to be around for a great many more, and I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for being part of the panel. You did an excellent job, and I know when the rest of the members get to see it, they'll be very pleased and proud of your books as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so we've been carrying on a little discussion here. So I think what I'll do is just read through the chat, the comments and any questions. Does that make sense? And then we can just open the floor to questions for the participants. Let's see here. Okay. Well, okay. So the sound was difficult all through, and sorry about that, but I got a lot out of watching this. I guess I asked the question, has anyone ever seen a book art exhibit that allowed for seeing the books intimately? As Shay was talking about the difference between other kinds of visual art and book arts. So Pat replies, we had a hands-on exhibit, or has everybody already seen this dialogue? We had a hands-on exhibit several years ago at a gallery curated by Malpino, where all the pieces could be held by the public, and they loved it. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And there have been, Jane replied, there have been exhibits of this sort, but few and far between. Hard to mount an exhibit with sufficient staff. However, open case nights and opportunities to invite students to our spaces are really important. And no gloves. Malpina says no gloves. I wonder, okay. And Peter has done an amazing job as a facilitator, excellent. There's been an exhibit at Eureka where we all wore gloves and were able to handle the books, and it was successful. And again, compliments to Peter for moderating and for the panelists. And I agree with that. So, all right. Is everyone seeing the chat? I don't know. Okay, all right, good. All right, so there's a school of thought that gloves can catch on the pages and tear them, so often clean hands, but no gloves. Collins Library hopes to do a Veterans Day display in November and would love to have Jim and Lucia share the book. Okay, so that is good. All right. So I guess Okay, I can't start my video. All right, let's see here.
Yeah, Sally, that's from me, Lucia.
Yeah,
I can't start the video. When I click start video, it says host has disabled your ability to start your video.
Oh, I'll fix it.
okay, cool. Yeah, I think you're the host now, or you're the,
Oh, okay.
There.
all right.
I have a response to that question about holding the books, having the people in the gallery hold the books. We had a show up at the Port Angeles Fine Arts Center 2 years ago, and I found that the first issue was to get permission from the artists themselves to let people touch their books. And so in the show, there were some books in a case, some books that said, please don't touch on islands. And then we had a little room off to the side that I called the petting room, where we had the books that that could be touched. And it was a favorite. And we sold a lot of books from that room.
Interesting.
Sally, might I say a word? I mean, certainly,
Sure.
this is Jane, and certainly in rare book and artist books in libraries, gloves are no longer the preferred use, because you can't actually have the tactile feeling of the paper, and so it could result in page tears or problems. So clean, dry hands are the standard. I think for those of us that have library collections, and certainly at Collins, it would be difficult to monitor the exhibit space without an individual. And I know in the past, we've had exhibits where we've had open the cases days and nights. And I think that's a compromise for many book exhibits, because you're absolutely right. Being able to touch those books and handle the books is so important. But I would just want to reemphasize to everyone on this show, Zoom call, that you can make arrangements to come into our library. I know it's not the same as seeing the books in this exhibit, and have the chance to handle and work with those books. So we really appreciate that. And Sha, I just loved your remarks about the value of artist books, because I feel like every student in a liberal arts college should be exposed to artist books. And for all the panelists, it's just so inspiring to listen to your stories. It's just amazing.
Well, I'd like to make a comment about Peter's facilitation. I think, a lot of times our panel discussions have been a lot about technique and method and things like that. And in this one, he was really able to focus us on the substance and content of the books, which I found very engaging both as a panelist and as a person who listened to the other panelists.
Cool.
He asked very provocative questions.
Yeah. I had a question of Jim, actually. If you can hear me, I was wondering, as I was watching, did the experience, well, both of you, did the experience of creating a memoir like you have, a book, did that change your take on your experience of the war?
Yeah, it kind of got you out of the box, so to speak.
Uh-huh. You
You
mean,
know, it was all in a big banana boxes. We used to store everything in banana boxes years ago.
uh-huh.
And they were inside shoe boxes in the banana boxes. And they still are, but at least the shoe boxes are out on the shelf now. So it is, yeah. I mean, it's like you start to think about that stuff more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely
And
changing.
revisit it, and
Yeah, which is like not that much fun.
I was thinking, know whether you could have heard Jim when he was asked that tough question about what one thing you could take away from the
Mhm.
book. But the first thing Jim said on the video, which may not have come through on the audio, was that they were just regular guys. And he wanted people to see what the experience of just being a regular guy was like.
Mhm.
So I think the book does that, and it's full of these wonderful letters that his mother saved for him, the letters that he wrote home, and most recently we've discovered audio tapes that he sent home as well. And
Little
those
3-inch reel-to-reels.
Yes.
his 20-year-old voice is very funny, real thick Queens accent, Queens, New York accent. Anyway, so we have a lot of material to work with.
So Peter gets his wish.
Right.
I was for Lisa. I just wanted to say that I particularly appreciated the way that you used words, descriptive words with double meanings and emphasizing the double meanings behind them. I think that's just, it makes you stop and think twice, first, oh, I'm thinking this way, and then, oh, right, it also means that. And that was just really powerful to me in your piece.
Thank you.
And also, I don't think I honestly can't remember having read Black Beauty. So now I'm going to go back
We're gonna read it.
and read it with
It's really
new
strange.
eyes
Yeah,
and
well,
take
it's
a look
really
at that
strange.
again.
Even if you're reading an abridged version that's
Yeah.
been somewhat updated
Yeah.
for the 21st century, it still is quite clearly something
Yeah.
from another time and place.
Yeah.
And there
Because
are
yeah.
a lot of assumptions that that people generally don't make anymore about the people around them and their social station and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's really apparent even when you get rid of the stuff that was just flat out ugly.
Blatant. Yeah. Yeah. And also just as a aside, there are old classics. If you loosely qualify them that way, there are some old classics that were written back in the day, like I would say probably, World War I or even earlier than that people didn't even think about what they were saying in those books. And
No,
and I
not at
remember
all.
coming across a couple of those and going, oh, this is one of those old classics. I should probably read it and see what, and then I was just like horrified, so I think that cleaning them up is one thing, but I think we also need to understand that they didn't start out that way, and there was reason for that we need to
Right,
know.
and that's why when I hear these discussions about book burnings, especially when they're talking about the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, I am firmly on the side of the librarians that everybody should be able to read it in its original form with the epithets, because it is really important to know that these insults, this degradation is not a recent thing or something that ended 50 years ago and we're all fine now.
Yeah, and airbrushing it out. Well, you can go back and clean up history, but that means you lose all the collective memory of everything that's happened to us as human beings, which is kind of silly, really.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get any smarter
Thank you
from
very
that.
much for your kind words.
Very, very, very heartfelt, and thank you very much.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That was from earlier, but I can agree with everyone. And I'm just thrilled with all the ideas and insights and comments. And thank you all. And thank you to Rachel. I put that in the chat, but putting that together during a pandemic was a feat of commitment and dedication to the book artist. So thank you very much.
And the techie guy that helped out too. You know that
Yes,
techie guy?
yeah, absolutely. Both of those.
Yeah. All the techies at Rachel's house that helped. Yeah.
So, and she has more work to do. She's going to edit this program, and we'll be able to see things into that were put into the chat. And I want to thank the panelists. I think that was fascinating, and I learned a lot from watching you. The dreamlike imagery of Lisa's and the memoir were wonderful contrasts to one another. And I like the integration of the two modes of thought and expression that Dorothy's book had, and Sha's presentation of the Buddhist prayer. Lovely. Thank you all.